Hey fam, happy Wednesday, August 4th. Hopefully you've had a decent week. You're halfway to Friday. Congrats on making it this far. You deserve an amazing few days, and hopefully they're coming to you. Let's talk about the three stories that matter today and how to make them actionable. The bronze medal, the runner-up today, goes to Greece. Absolutely brutal, tragic story. They've been dealing with these extreme temperatures that have been kind of ravaging the world. In BC, we saw over 800 people die. And in Athens right now, they're starting with temperatures at over 45 degrees. They've had over 100 fires in the last 2 days. It's just been cracking down on people. It's just absolutely tough. Through the comments, you'll see people saying the same things we're always saying, right? Like, when are we going to finally see an international climate plan? When are countries going to agree to work together? When are our politicians going to do stuff? It's just absolutely rough. And I don't think we're going to see the wealthiest rein in their resource extraction or cut down on emissions by any extent. Like through this COVID, we haven't seen emissions drop. I think they've only increased, even though we've seen like car emissions and things like that go down, like production, manufacturing, all that stuff. The richest 1% are not going to listen to the ballot box to tell them that they can't be rich anymore. They need to let the planet survive. So we need to talk about some serious things to do outside of the ballot box. But that's a topic for a different conversation because we don't have time for that today. And this is just a bronze medal today. I also want to add, extreme heat could make Athens uninhabitable, warns the city's chief heat officer. And I thought maybe it was going to be health officer. There's a typo. No, it's a chief heat officer. That is a legit role in the hell world we live in. I absolutely hate to see it. One of the things that is also interesting about this, other than just to know that Rosemary Barton just seems to be perpetually complexed as to why the world is so bad while she continues to support the liberals and their pipelines, is it's also frustrating because, especially like if you like mutual aid and things like that, we've seen that landlords are not accommodating to people by any stretch of the imagination. So people in these high temperatures, they want AC, they want fans. Some people, they just want to squirt themselves with like some bottled water. A lot of this stuff you're not allowed to do if you're renting because they want to keep their area pristine. They want to keep their investment secure. And so we've seen a lot of people go to the hospital and whatnot because they haven't been able to maintain a safe temperature in their home. It's disgusting to see, and we need to fight against it. And how we do that is primarily through tenant unions and organizations like that, and then also pushing back against our politicians with groups like Horizon Ottawa, your local municipal groups, to try to make sure we've got bylaws in place to protect the renters, protect the working class, but people who have to rent, to make sure that they are given safe temperatures to live under. It's just such a rough time, and we have to like stick together. Our silver medal actually maybe is a little bit less important, but it's something important to keep top of mind, and that comes from Amy Katz, who today was saying some doctors who have been tweeting about justice all pandemic are now tweeting excitedly about a liberal candidate. I've been worried for months that they'd soon resume defending the status quo, but this time with new activist credibility to further muddy the waters. And this is dead on. We talked a little bit about this a few days ago about how the doctors typically are the richest. They're the ones who are defending the status quo. They're the biggest funders of the conservative political parties, and they also give a lot of money to the liberals. And if you want to take a look at things like strategically, we always want to look at like what's systemic cause, right? And if we take a look a little further back at what's been going on through the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of people die in privatized long-term care. It's coming from organizations that don't want to be spending money on people in terms of their workers, and they don't want to be spending money on cost, which is the poor people that are trying to survive in these long-term care centers. So we've seen a lot of deaths from both the workers and from those who are having to stay there. And so it seems to be that the clearest way to solve this is to make public or nationalize long-term care. That's something that the federal NDP has supported pretty vocally. The provincial NDPs is kind of random. The provincial NDPs can be pretty gross, but it's something that we've seen the doctors, those who are in this system and you think might have more compassion, are leaning towards the conservatives and the liberals, even though we know that publicizing or nationalizing this is the way to save lives. And so to take a little bit of a step further into it, then we look at capital and where is the money coming from and where is it going? And of course, doctors are there protecting their capital, protecting their status as a privileged few, and are supporting the liberals and the conservatives heavily as opposed to the NDP. So just a thing to keep in mind as we see doctors lead rallies and good rallies against conservative governments in Ontario and Alberta, that these are good people and they're doing good things, but we also want to be mindful of what exactly their class is and where their interests lie. And they typically do not lie with the people. So we always want to be mindful that they're not going to be taking credibility from a movement for the working class, credibility from the masses. We want to support these efforts when they align with our interests, but not become so entangled that we get super depressed, or they've stolen our credibility and now are able to go and fight candidates who are actually interested in addressing the systemic causes of these issues. It's been a weird day watching these conversations take place. And then I think the big story for today and the gold medal story, and it starts in a weird place, but we'll get to a better one. So obviously, whenever a celebrity is involved, everybody talks about it. And I thought John Cleese was maybe too old for people to still talk about, but now this is the trending story, so this is what we're going to run with. Airbnb, we'll tear into them in a second here. So John Cleese asked for a place to stay in Huntsville, Ontario after Airbnb misunderstanding. Long story short, Airbnb hates the people that use it a little bit more than it hates the people who don't. The people who use it, John Cleese, does anyone in Huntsville, Ontario have a nice place I can live? Well, I make a film. Airbnb took our money, but now say they've given our house to someone else. Why did they take the money then? We won't get into all of that, but this is common for Airbnb. They have so many issues and errors, and you're dealing with Airbnb, which is a tech startup, so it automatically just kind of hates people and is going to be a terrible customer experience regardless. But then you're also dealing with landlords, and Airbnb has now made it so everybody can be a landlord. The worst of the worst, the dregs of society. It's been absolutely terrible to watch. We see Adam Smith, the paragon of capitalism, say landlord's right has its origin in robbery. The landlords, like all other men, love to reap where they never sow and demand a rent for even the natural produce of the earth. And it's been like, if you take a look at Airbnb, it is not only terrible for the customer side, but the communities in which it operates, it absolutely guts them. In Toronto, if Toronto's short-term rental rules were enforced today, Airbnb would have to remove 8,200 non-compliant listings. Up to 6,500 entire homes could be added to Toronto's long-term housing supply. And this comes from a group called Fairbnb, and they do a fair bit of research into what Airbnb is doing and how it's harming people. And as we're seeing the world open back up with COVID and people like John Cleese and other people coming back into our society, coming back across the border, coming to stay, the landlords are turning once again to Airbnb. They're allowed to evict people again, so let's just toss people out of long-term care, and let's allow the richest people who have the ability to travel across borders and have the finances to go and stay a few nights in a few places and then move to somewhere else. Let's make everything accessible to them, and that's going to be really harming our society, really harming our communities. And so it is really important to rally around tenants unions, groups like Fairbnb. There's also a group called Insidebnb, and they do a lot of really interesting research. And one of the things that most recently they've noticed is that as we've seen the the capital be concentrated through COVID, some of these groups are using that capital to go up and buy massive amounts of property. So one of the things that popped up in Barcelona was, this is just like a completely random email. I think they didn't do their research when they were emailing Inside Airbnb. Inside Airbnb, very opposed to Airbnb. This group thought that they got data from Airbnb. So their request was, "Hi, my name is Depressing, and I'm interning for a small real estate investment firm that is focused on Barcelona and Paris properties. So far, they've acquired hundreds of units across both cities and have used the Airbnb platform to list their properties for rent. I have been assigned to get historical data for the past 10 years on the city of Barcelona, and specifically on the neighborhood of Example for a presentation for their next round of fundraising for their investment firm. The data you have on your website is super helpful, and it would be amazing if you could provide the rest of it for the years prior." So the comment here is that it's data request from a small real estate investment firm that is focused on Barcelona and Paris properties. So far, they've acquired hundreds of units across both cities and have used the Airbnb platform to list their properties for rent, stealing our homes. How can we shut down this real estate investment firm that has stolen hundreds of homes in Barcelona and Paris via Airbnb? Anyone interested in following the data? And this is what we've seen. Like, I think we've seen stories about, I think it's BlackRock investment. We've seen a lot of pension funds, a lot of big corporate groups are buying up a lot of land. And they're either keeping the land for them to operate kind of exclusively as a vendor to rent out to others, or they're using it to put back onto platforms like Airbnb and renting them out as short-term rentals. And this is only going to increase as we come out of COVID. It's going to be getting a lot worse as we're seeing cops being prioritize for vaccinations so they in turn can prioritize evictions. I feel so bad for saying it, but even though we've been stuck in COVID for so long and now we're kind of coming out of it, we're not coming out of it to kind of relax and rest after a long kind of hibernation. We're coming back to real struggle against some of like the biggest organizations and wealthiest people in society. It's never been more important to kind of join a mutual aid group. Join a tenant union, get involved with the groups that are going to be directly dealing with this. And then again, Horizon Ottawa, like municipal groups in your area, Google them because they are going to be key in not just, as we talked about, fighting for people's like temperature, so you have like a safe living environment, but they're also necessary to make sure you have a living environment. So we really got to start rallying together and organizing. It's a ridiculous time. I'm losing my mind. But I think that if we just kind of keep on working together, we look for points of action and we look for points where people are doing well and we learn from the best practices and share them with love and camaraderie with each other, I think that we can turn things around. But we are going to have to fight hard and we're going to have to find a way to have a fun time while doing it. So with that, to cap it, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm sending you love and solidarity.